Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. I have another pack of paper that I found interesting in terms of its appearance, and I got this on Amazon. But it's a white wood background stationery. Okay, it's 28 pounds, so letter weight as opposed to cover weight. 105 GSM, 80 sheets per pack. And okay, I can't remember the price of this, but relatively, I don't know, I thought reasonable in terms of what this is. Okay, so you can see it's pretty cool. And what I like about it in particular as something to stamp on is that it doesn't have a lot of contrast in the patterning. So in theory, as far as scenic stamping goes, I think we can stamp just about anything we want on it without having to worry about, some sort of contrasted area in the background like a lot of, let's say, the placemat types of papers are. I had a really good placemat paper like this one that didn't have a lot of contrast in it, but some of the other ones do these days. So, or the scrapbooking styles of papers. So, I don't know. I thought this looked pretty good, so we're going to give it a shot here. I've trimmed down a couple of these. These are 8.5 by 11, by the way. And I don't know, probably the main purpose of it is for your inkjet or laser printers, to print something on, copier compatible, etc. It's thin enough for that, so you can load it up in the cell feed even. But what I've done is I've cut it down. I've trimmed it down into half page and quarter page. Hello, Janet. How are you? I've cut them down to this size right here. These ones would make really fast ones right here with the quarter page, but I see myself probably using the half page a little bit more. Just in terms of if we're working on this type of paper, if you want to see the patterning on it, we just don't want to cover everything up, which has been my mistake with using the marble paper a little bit. I get carried away with the shading and everything like that. So, I don't see the patterning of this marble paper quite as much. On this one right here, I did. I left things a little bit more open, but we'll try to do that. We'll try to keep that in mind with this wood grain paper here. Okay, so let's give it a shot here. I don't know if it's conducive for any particular type of scenery. I think it's general and neutral enough where we can do any type of season on it, but it would look pretty cool, I think, in a winter type of format, just in terms of the I don't know. I guess there's some cooler gray tones in here. I don't really see warmer tones in here. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think, but maybe there's a little bit of a greenish tinge in there. I'm not really quite sure. It's not just a straight grayscale only. It has a little bit of hue to it, I think. Maybe a greenish one. I don't know if I'm just seeing things, but anyways, I thought I would start off with a wintry type of experiment here. I'm looking at this one right here. Maybe we'll do something in line with something like that and take a look at that. Let's just go grayscale for right now, and then we'll add in some color because I just want to get kind of the gist of this paper and see how it takes the inks. Hello, Linda. Caroline, good to see you. Cynthia, how are you all? I hope you had a good last week. I was in Las Vegas. I took my son and his friend to this big event for their sport. So they attended some seminars and whatever, the big showcase showdown on Saturday night. I hadn't been out to Vegas and walking around that area on the Strip in years and years. We used to go out there every now and then, but I haven't been out there in a long time since, I don't know, resort fees and parking charges and all that type of stuff. All right, let's see how it accepts ink. So anytime I get a new type of paper, um, I like to press and hold my images for a little bit longer than, you typically would on, just a regular matte paper, or I don't know, whatever, semi-gloss or even glossy, regular type of cardstock, because we're trying to penetrate and transfer our ink onto this pre-printed paper. So even though it looks really white like that, it has all those printer inks on it. So I don't know how many colors they would use for something like this. It's probably a 2-color process, I'm guessing. It's definitely not a 4-color process. I don't know, it could be. Like I said, I think there's a little bit of a tinge of a color in there. Okay, so that paper took the ink pretty much like that marble one that I've been playing around with. I think I do need to add some ink to this, though. Anytime I'm using these papers like that, I think it's probably a pretty good idea to load up my pad a little bit more than what I would normally do if I was working on standard cardstocks. Okay, and let's do a second impression, and let me see if I can. Now I have like so much ink on this now from re-inking, but let's go like that. And let's go up here. I'll just use the same tree. On this one here, I use the smaller trees in the background. Well, let's see what we can do here. Dare I go for 3 impressions? Let's go ahead and try it. I'm thinking I got that little bit of a tree on this tree right here, so I'm not quite sure if there's going to be an even distribution of ink right down here. This corner right here might have been a little bit more or less ink removed. It's okay, it's fine. So let's see here. I wonder if I can do this here. I've been usually stamping this little kid with the footprints separate, like in a separate impression. Why not just put them both here, huh? Like that. I'm a slow learner. It's like, oh, are we allowed to do that? Okay, I'm gonna remove some of the ink off the footprints though, because it's supposed to be, where he's walking through snow, so I don't want the, whatever, the impressions to be like super dark. Let's see how this goes right here. So just done in grayscale. All right, so there's my first little test right here. So you can kind of see, it's a little bit different, of course, than just stamping it, if I was stamping it on a white piece of cardstock like that. So it has a little bit of a character to it with those striations going like that way, horizontal. And then let's add in a little bit of shading to it. Hello, Zale. More new paper. Yeah. I was looking at, I don't know why I was looking at some papers. I think I was looking for something, then I came across this one, and I thought, I think I had been looking for placemat papers. Yeah. Those placemat papers, when they work really fantastic because they're 11 by 17, and they're disposable, so they're really cheap. I was looking for the wood grain one again because I keep praying that one, this wood grain one comes back, because that thing was like too perfect for scenic stamping. But then I came across this one. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of shadow shading work at the base of these trees. So just make sure that when you're doing a shadow, don't make the shadow darker than the object that's casting the shadow typically, okay? And so the shadows for this one right here, you can match the value of that, but it would look a little bit strange if the shadow was like really deep in this area right here, being cast by the tree, where the shadows, the darkest shadows within that form, aren't as dark as the areas down here, okay? Unless you add a little bit more tone in here and you vary the shadows in here, then you can make, this area in here a little bit darker, or areas of the shadow a little bit darker. Otherwise, it kind of looks a little bit awkward. All right, so right down here, so it's just real simple. You just kind of add that shadow down there like so. And I'm not making a long kind of like a moon or something out there and casting like long shadows. So we'll just kind of do this kind of neutral, kind of more anchoring, or not neutral, but general tone around it like that. And then what I do is I come back after I do that light shadow like that. Then what I do is I come back and I make the area right at the beginning of the shadow. I can't talk. I missed like last week's live stream, so I can't articulate my thoughts here. Whatever the point of emanation from the shadow, you just make it darker like that. So instead of doing this range, which you could do, like a graded range just in one fell swoop like that, I just find it easier just to go like this, right? And then you add in the darker area like that. It's just, I don't know, it's a little bit easier to work that way if you have a kind of a larger area. Okay. Larger area being, I don't know, like an inch or something to work with. All right, so anyways, see these little shadows like that? It's kind of anchoring things down. And then we have the inherent striations of the wood grain, in there. This would look good for like ice too, wouldn't it? If you're going to utilize that. I don't know, it's almost like too light like that, but like little ice skaters or something like that with a, water's edge or whatever, something like that, pond's edge might be pretty cool. So this right here, so you just kind of add these shadow forms like that around all of your objects, and it really anchors them into the scenario. And right here, I'll just leave that as is. I'll add a little bit more shading around the footprints, maybe like that. And yeah. Anyway, so if we do something like this, in grayscale, I think that silver type of paper like that around there would look pretty cool. But yeah, it makes for a pretty quick scene for sure, huh? Similar to, yeah, Cynthia, I didn't have any paper like this either. So I thought this one could really work nicely here. Hello, David, how are you? Good to see you. Do you draw your stamps and get them? I do design my own stamps, so through the, they call it the engraving process, but it's really an etching process more than an engraving. So on these sets like this, you lay out your whatever you're engraving, and then they print it onto a magnesium plate, and then any part that is printed onto that magnesium, the acid doesn't etch away that printed area, so you get this raised magnesium plate, and then from there they do they make a mold from that. So yeah, so we're talking about a few generations away from the original design, but it's a pretty cool process, printmaking process. But the thing that I'm always surprised at in this entire process is you have the original, then you get the magnesium plate, and then they make the mold from that, and then you get the rubber pressed into the mold, and then you make the final impression. So we're talking about several generations away from that original. But I'm just surprised that it can hold the detail from that original design to the final impression, through that whole process like that, where there's a lot of compression and pressing, of all the different materials. I don't know, maybe it shouldn't come as a surprise to me, I guess they do, they print thousands of dollar bills from a similar process, I guess, right off the same plate. All right, let's try out a half page of this. Let me see. I guess one of the things that you do have to kind of consider is which way's up and which way's down. So I'm going to do something with a couple cabins, and this will be a lake in here. So it's like, do I want that kind of that darker thing up in the sky? Maybe that would look a little bit better up in the sky like that, huh? We'll go like that. Or it could be down here on the water's edge or something like that. Or if it's ice, it could be, winter type of scenario. Yeah, so on something like this was always one of those things when I'm designing rubber stamps. It's there's so much detail in the tighter, more dense areas of this design. It's like I'm always kind of wondering, okay, is this going to translate to a rubber stamp, or am I making the details too tight? It was more of a consideration before. I've just been making things like, I'm kind of realizing that sometimes I've been a little bit conservative in the past where I don't add as much detail as I do now. But these days, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just like, been adding as much detail as I want. And it seems to, I don't know, I haven't been let down, but all those little tight little areas in between those stippled dots still translate pretty well. And it looks, I don't know, it doesn't look any different to me than the original. All right, let's see. Let's give this cabin right here a neighbor right here. So we'll put this like this. Maybe up here a little bit. So here's another cabin with some surrounding trees. So we'll flank it. Did I just do that right there? Yeah, I got my finger imprint right there for some reason. In scenic stamping, that's what they invented overhanging leaves, though, huh? For. All right, let's see. Let's do this right here. Let me make a little bit of faster impression. Let me see if it. Yeah, okay, it came out a little bit lighter. I was just kind of curious if I was holding my stamp down a little bit too long, more than what I needed to, but I think we should hold it down a little bit longer. I figured if it would come out a little bit lighter, it's supposed to be in the distance anyways, from this one here, so I don't care if that one came out a little bit lighter. All right, let's see. Let's go with let's go with some foreground trees in here. Again, I'll use the same one here that I used right here, okay? But we'll use it for some foreground snowy imagery, okay? To give ourselves some distance and distance, perspective, etc. Framing. Okay, I want these ones nice and dark, so let's press and hold for a little bit longer here. You can see how much, you can see how much darker that came out than that one right there. But again, that one's supposed to be in the distance, so it looks a little bit lighter. Oh yeah, I didn't use any white pigment ink on that that first scene tonight. I'll see what it looks like on this one right here. I'll see if my Brilliance white pigment ink is lighter than the white that's the lighter areas on this paper. Hello, Debbie. How are you? Let's see if I had one of those molds. Oh! Yeah. This one's getting all messed up here. I got all these little dots around here. But I'll show you, when it comes to like scenic stamping, it's like a who cares type of thing. So, I would go a lot of, in other types of stamping, if someone was like in a class of mine and it's like the first time they've ever done scenic stamping before, there can be, if something happened, there's like a little dot or something like that. They might get a little bit panicky. But it's always the joke that in scenic stamping, if you get something that you don't want on your scene, you just cover it up with like a branch or something like that. All right. Like that. I leave myself an opening for the composition, and we'll put some things back in here, but I was going to show some. So just a little side thing here. David asked about the molds. These are what these molds look like right here. This is called a Bakelite right here, but you can see all those little dots on there in the tight details right here. I don't press my own rubber, but my rubber guy sent me this piece right here. After a while, you can get so many impressions off of one, they call this Bakelite or the Matrix type of board like that. It feels like a piece of masonite right there. But you can see where the heat from the metal plate pressed through into this right here, so you can see how it looks on the back side of it. But this is another one right here. It's a little bit of a different color, but the original guy that pressed my rubber, this is my plate number 1C. So it was the first plate ever from Stampscapes, or the first, not plate, but mold or matrix board from Stampscapes. But you can see all those little, you can see it on this one easier, but all those little tight details, and of course that's the reverse of it. So the rubber's getting pressed into it and the whole sheet comes out from that. So you're hoping that it retains all those little dots in there. Anyway, a little aside there. Okay, let's see here. Let's get some things in the back. And let's put some mountains back there. Where did my tall peak go? Here we go. So we'll put some mountains right back in there, I think. Or, let's see. Maybe we'll put this water's edge down there too. We have so many different stamps to choose from nowadays. Let's put these trees right in here. So these tall peaks will be right back in here, and then I'll put these trees right here. If I stamp both of these in black, okay, they'll kind of merge in with one another. So I'll show you how we take care of that. To create kind of spatial differentiation, and we just use value to control that. All right, so these are going to be more distant types of trees in here. So what we'll do is we'll just take this, blot it off a little bit, and then I'm going to transition this from a little bit darker to lighter down here, but the whole thing is going to be fairly light because I've stamped it out once already. That, okay. Ink it up again, blot it off again, wipe off the bottom a little bit, and let's do something like that. And let's see, should I go for one more over here? Let's just leave it like that. And let's see. Let's do this. I'm going to have to do this one. Okay, I don't have very much room for that mountain back there, but let's get a little bit of this texturing on the lower portion right in here. I could do a smaller mountain that'll fit, but I don't know, if you do these kind of these larger forms like that, it gives the mountain a little bit more, I don't know. We won't be able to see it that much, but it gives it a little bit more majesty in terms of scale and size like that. Okay, we can't see it at all. All right. I blotted it off once and I wiped it off. That was the problem. So let's just go like this. Let's just wipe it off like this manually. I won't remove any ink from an impression standpoint. Like that. And let's put another impression over here when it doesn't stamp out dark enough. Am I doing that? Let's see. It's that side. Just stamp it over and don't try to, unless you're using a positioner, I would say you don't need to match it up, you know, with something like this background stamp. It's just basically going for texturing like that. All right, so that is that. And let's see here. Get this ink off my fingers. All right. Let's see. I still have these people here. These little ice skaters. Let's put them ice skaters on here. I want to do this scene again sometime where I'm doing a reflection card, so we're using that silver cardstock down below. And then I have a full moon up top that's reflecting on the ice, but then I put the ice skater in that reflected moon on the, you know, on the ice. I don't know, I haven't done that in a while, but I don't know, we should. I haven't done a reflection card in a while. All right, so these little figures are going to be a little bit out of scale with each other. Like if I'm stamping them up there, you know, you probably should have been a little bit lower, but I don't. If I want all three of these on here, I just kind of, I don't think about that too much. You know, that ice skater there is just like this professional 7-foot basketball player. All right, so go like that. And then let's just anchor them again. Maybe I'll bring in a little bit of color to it. When I start adding color to these different pre-printed background papers, I tend to go a little bit crazy with it, and I just keep adding and adding and adding, and then in the end, it's like, oh, we can't see the patterning of the background paper anymore. You know, I guess it doesn't matter if you like it better, you know, with the with whatever you add in, but you know, you're not really staying with the spirit of the paper then. You know? Okay, so that being said, though, if I added a lot of color to this, let's say this is a spring type of thing, there's blues in here, and I just color it all in, I I would have been better off just going with a a thicker piece of heavier cardstock than this much lighter weight one. It's just I find it, oh, I don't know, more pleasing, I guess, when I'm working on stiffer cardstocks. Just in terms of the weight of it, the way that you can add more media to a stiffer cardstock because it has more pulp, to retain that liquid form especially without the paper kind of curling on you and things like that. So on something like this, I'm trying to keep it pretty simple. So I don't know if you could see it in here. I can see it kind of closer up. My camera is kind of compensating a little bit, but you can see a little bit of those forms in there. And I guess you can see that whole thing going across in there. I guess by stamping over, the mountain in there, though, you kind of eradicate some of that patterning. But let's fill in some of this a little bit more. I'm kind of obscuring that little dot of whatever, my fingerprint a little bit. Let's do this. Does anyone here ice skate? I don't. I think it'd be cool too, though. Like this guy right here, this ice skater right here, it reminds, there's this video on YouTube. It shows this guy, I don't know where he is. I think he's in like a Nordic country or something like that. And I don't know if it's Norway or something like that, but he's skating across this frozen lake. But it's just frozen enough to where and he goes out and tests it. I don't know, he's been doing that his whole life, so he knows what the conditions are, right? But there's this weird kind of sound as he's going across the surface, and it's making this kind of whip sound or something like that. And I think it's the ice kind of cracking or something like that, but it's kind of this, it sounds like cables or something like that, like snapping or something like that. There's this echoey kind of sound to it, which is really cool. I haven't watched that. I probably saw that video, I don't know, 10 years ago. It's probably still on here, but it's so cool. And it's just this one guy going out by himself, and it's this really kind of bizarre sound. It's all about the sound, though, that it's making. It's really cool. All right, so that is that. Let's give this a shot with some... I don't think I need to do any kind of highlights on here, although we can try just to see what it's going to look like here. Yeah, glad you like that paper, Janet. Yeah, so I should put some of this right here so people can see as they log in here. But that paper is pretty cool to work on. And, you can add in those little tinges of, other colors into this. I'll do something I don't know, whatever, not wintry after this one. Okay, I can't really see this too much. I could see it right in front of me, But adding these like little highlights into my trees, it's creating a little white dot that's going to look a little bit darker and more see-through as it dries, but it stands out a little bit right now. But the contrast, I'm guessing, in those trees right there, it's probably like a, I don't know, like a 1% or something like that, because this isn't completely white, against like a 5% gray or something like that. So I don't know. I guess you can see it a little bit, huh? It gives us a little bit more dimension here. And I don't know, I think that looks pretty cool. But then again, you know, like I said, when this acrylic white paint dries, I don't know if we'll be able to see it on here or not. I don't know if the contrast is enough to maintain that whatever visibility, that difference there. Let me try this too. Here, I'll go in some of these windows right here, and I'll make it a little bit lighter with an interior lit structure here, like this. I don't know. Can you see any difference between that one and that one? That one does look darker, but I think I stamped that across, you know, one of those other grayer patterns in there. So let's bring that out a little bit. Whether or not it's worthwhile doing this, I don't know. You know, for what you can see. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it stands out a little bit more, like the interior illumination. Let's try something here too. Let me just run a little bit of this tinge of this other color like I was doing on the marble paper on some of those experiments on that, but I'll just bring a little bit of this blue into the mix here. So give it a bluish gray in some areas maybe. So I'm not trying, I'm trying not to change the spirit of the shading too much, but just to give it a little tinge of a color, of hue in here. I'd be a lot more careful when I'm just trying to do this really fast here. So anyways, I don't know if you can see it here. There's a little bit of a bluish tinge in here. I use this one, but this one would stand out a little bit more because it's a little bit of a warmer blue, like an aqua turquoise blue, but this one kind of just gives this a little hint of a hue to this. I don't know if you, this paper is pretty fun. You know, any types of these pre-printed background papers, if you wanted to do, if you were doing something where you're mass producing a bunch of scenes for Christmas cards, it would be, you know, a pretty decent one to start off with and just stamp on. And just, I would do a little tiny bit of shading, unless you're doing like 50 of these or something like that, but you can just stamp on them and just kind of having that inherent little patterning in there. It would give you a really good head start to the card, where you wouldn't have to do too much post impressions like that. So anyway, so here's this one right here. Here it is on the marble paper like that. Here it is something similar on the wood grain paper. It's a lot more subtle in there. So there's like these little things in here. I can see it in here. It looks like something that I've added here in terms of the shade. You know, in here you can see it contrasted against just white in here, but it takes care of a lot of those little subtle types of things that you might add in there if you were working on a white piece of paper, but you don't have to because it's already on here. So anyway, it's the trade-off though too between having something so subtle that it allows for just about anything to be stamped on there without showing through it in a too obtrusive way, to, you know, not having it on there so distinctly that you can see it. So, you know, but you can, like I said, you can use different parts of the paper for whatever thing you're going after. Let's try. Let me see. What was I gonna do? I forgot what I was gonna do. Okay, here. Let's try something really fast. Right, this. Okay, so we're gonna go with these striations in here. We're gonna use these striations in here for sky patterning and water. I don't know, maybe we won't be able to see it on the water. I was just going to use the Seaside Cove small here and stamp that down there. You could stamp it across this way. It would give you a lot of these like parallel line type of things, though. So I generally see this as being used, you know, in, you know, going with the grain, I guess, wood grain. All right. Let's see. You did some ice skating as a child. Cool, cool. Now, did you do it? I don't know where you grew up, Caroline. Did you do it on like some kind of frozen, you know, lake, or were you doing it indoor, like in a ice skating rink? Okay, let's see how this goes here. Let me hold down a little bit longer. So this one, this stamp right here, the Seaside Cove, is a little bit more of this airy type of design where it's made up, except for the sides, these rocks in here, primarily of little dots. So if I'm working with a much more, you know, solid style of image, like, you know, this tree right here, it'll stamp out darker inherently, but because this one's a little bit more airy like that, you know, maybe hold those ones down on the surface a little bit longer while making your impressions. I don't know. And I'm sure all these papers are a little bit different. The pre-printed papers, that is. Okay, let me, you know, I haven't, let me see if I can fit my little sea turtles in here. Let me see if I can find, oh. Good, here's my book of unmounted stamps. And I had it open right to this one, so here's some little sea turtles like that. And let me see, let's go tropical on this one. All right, I'm in luck. Things are, everything I'm looking for is like right around me today. My crafting room here, it's kind of cluttered, but I do know where everything's at. For the most part, I do start tidying up when I start, you know, I can't find anything at some, you know, I'm always looking for something, so. Let's see, let's go with that. Let's go with another one of these on the other side here. I'm going to do something really subtle here. I'm going to go a little bit lower than this one right here. This one's like right on the horizon. I'm going to go a little bit lower on this one by about, I don't know, less than a quarter inch or something like that. So this, see, when you do it this lower like that, you can see it right here on this indexing. But see, this one will seem a little bit closer to us than that one right there. So higher up on the horizon, the farther back it represents, a little bit lower, a little bit closer. So you can do things like that. I mean, it could have been on the same kind of plane, but see this right here? It just seems like it's a little bit closer, so you create this little cove that goes out there like that than having that right up there. Yeah, I don't do that all the time, but that's one of those things you can kind of do. I mean, I could do another one right here if I wanted to. So it's like this little inlet, you know. And let's see, I haven't done a baby sea turtle type of scenario in a while, which is really fun to do. I should do a little bit of a moon up here. Okay, let me see. Okay, those are going that way. Put them right over here, like about like so. All right, a little bit of texturing around here, like this. So I started it over here for the darkest impression on the perimeter, and then by the time I get, you know, a few impressions in, those impressions are lighter, so I get the benefit of the texture in here without kind of just obscuring my, you know, what's like the star of the scene, you know, the little baby sea turtles like that. So I'll put a few more of these darker and more numerous impressions around on the edge like that. So that kind of illuminates this area in here by having it a little bit lighter. So you kind of frame off this lower portion like that. And let's see. Let's go with, we need to hide those turtles a little bit. So they're, you know, they're kind of emerging from, I don't know, whatever, the bluffs or something like that with a little bit of a coastal seagrass. Okay, like that. I'll close it on a little bit more because we're witnessing kind of one of those special moments, and we don't want to scare anything. I should do that more often. When I stamp a deer or something like that in a forest scene, I should put more like grass where it's like the foreground's like really obscure, where you're like peeking through, you know. Because if they saw you, they'd run off, you know, out in whatever nature. Okay, let's see. Let's do a little bit of this. Let's add a little of this aqua tone to it. And let's see if we can give it a little bit of a, I don't know, more of a, I don't know if it's going to be inviting, but just, I don't know, whatever, a more friendly, potentially type of vibe in here. So this area in here had that texturing where it was a little bit darker, and it's a little bit lighter in here. So there's 3 zones in here. So you got foreground, midground, background, or sky, okay? So I don't know if I'll do it up here, but I'll handle these 2 areas down below in a similar fashion, where the perimeter is a little bit darker than the interior in here, okay? And then I handle the Seaside Cove a little bit differently too, so it's a little bit just darker on the edges like this, but then you go into this right here and you color underneath these waves a little bit, so it's inherently a little bit darker underneath them anyway, but then you just go in and just reiterate that with a little bit more tone like this. And that makes those waves a little bit more dimensional like that, okay? And then we have this area down here. This is supposed to be water, of course, though. So maybe I'll use, I don't know, maybe a gray. Here, I'll use a gray in here. Or you can use like brown for sand or something like that. There's a little bit of a steel gray here. I'll use some of this up here as well. And then I'll go into the black with this. I want to keep this a little bit lighter. so I won't go too dark with this. If this was a nighttime type of scene, I would make my shadows a little bit more distinct and darker. But on this one right here, if this is the sky, this is kind of cool right here. So this has this natural kind of transitioning tone like that because of the background paper. So it's a little bit darker up here, and then it's lighter down here on the horizon. So I don't know. I guess the paper took care of that, whatever, transitioning tone aspect or whatever structure for me. All right, something like this. This really needs like this. I'll do it like a quote stamp up here. I think that one that I use for the baby sea turtles a lot is it's like the beginning of a something. I forget what it was, but it begins with like the one's first step or something like that. So a quote stamp right up here would be good, really good. And again, I don't know if this is like, you probably could do like a little sun or something like that, or like a orb, or it could be a moon, represent a moon or whatever, coming up from this horizon like that. I did have, I don't know, where was that one? I could mask this off like this too, and have this one like coming up from like right on the horizon. And what I would do is on the interior here, if I did that, I would probably ink this in, or paint it in with the paint pen, like a white paint pen. Or, I don't know, maybe it's light enough to where you just kind of add a little bit more tone around it, you know, to make it stand out a little bit. So there's different options, but I think on this one right here, I think I want to go with that quote stamp up here. And I don't know, maybe I feel like doing a little sailboat or something like that in here too, but I don't know, you know, we have this baby sea turtles. Do we want like a boat out there? You know, I don't know about that. Or I don't know, we have like that whale, you know, or a dolphin jumping out here too. I don't know, would they would eat those though, right? Maybe not. We're thinking about the safety of baby sea turtles when stamping. It's all about the babies here. It's one of those things, and you watch those nature types of shows, you know, and it's just like, hey, you know, what about these lions and everything? They gotta hunt and they gotta live, you know. But I don't know. There's something with the baby sea turtles. Every time I see that, it's like, oh man, they should make like some kind of like thing, you know, overhang, you know, this tunnel system where they can get out in the water without getting chomped by everything. All right, so there's three things stamped on this paper, so it's pretty it's a pretty easy paper to use for whatever scenes we want. Let's go with a little bit more color. These ones are coming along pretty fast, so let's go with a little bit more color, and you know, while still trying to retain some of that. I try not to go like nuts with this, you know. Let's see what we should do here. I feel like I missed some Halloween types of things because I jumped into the that other the other two latest sets for the ultra cool Stamp Wars event. But I was glad to do that though, but I still had some Halloween types of things to do, I think, in my system. Let's just try to do something like that here. Or I'll do something fallish with these trees here. I don't know, I'll probably stamp some kind of ghost. Let's do it. Let's build it around this Snowy Creek here. It won't be quite snowy though, but let's see what we can do with that. Okay, let's see. Outdoor ice rink in Washington, D.C., then the Midwest, and an indoor ice rink. Got it. More roller skating. Yeah. So roller skating, that got really popular. I think there was a skating rink in our town, in our very small city that I grew up in. I think that was in the late 70s, I think it was. Yeah, roller skating got big, just in general, right? Am I a little bit out of focus here? There we go. All right, let's set this about like so. Again, we'll go with the vertical format here to keep those striations going horizontal. Okay, like that. I stamped it pretty low because I'm going to have these trees coming up right up here. All right. Okay. It's strange stamping on these pre-printed papers at times because, you know, one of the strategies is to retain the background. You know, oftentimes when we're working just on a white piece of paper, not that we're necessarily trying to fill up everything, but, you know, just having kind of a blank open area. Okay, I forgot to use the Brilliance ink on those other two papers. Maybe that's a good sign. I was going to try to use some additional white pigment ink on these, but I didn't even think about it because I thought those looked pretty decent without that extra texturing. But yeah, it's the retention of this inherent background on here. I guess the more subtle it is, the more of a like a conscious thought it has to be. Like I love working on like Deanna Tubsadio's background papers because they're so bold, most of them, you know, and dynamic. So I don't have to consider it too much. I'm working around a lot of those things too, but I'm not worried about covering something up to the point of, you know, where it's just not even visible anymore. Okay. Now, should I just stamp this out as is, or should I transition it a little bit? Let's just go with the whole thing. Like this. Or maybe I'll do two impressions. Or should I? I was going to do another one back here where it's lighter in the background, but then I'm going to be covering up some things in here. Huh. Let's go ahead and do it. That was my first inclination. Let's see it. Let's go ahead and do it here. I'll blot it off, and then I'll transition it. I'll try to make this one really light. Let's come over here, though, I think. That. Okay. Yeah, like that, I guess. And let's see. This is all my scratch paper. You can see what I do when I print these out like that, because after I alter things on the computer, like those eyes in there, I have to see what those images are going to look like full scale or something like that. So I say 100% like that, because if I like that size right there, or I might make some alterations to it, you know, in terms of scale. Because looking at it on the computer just doesn't do it for me in terms of you know, what it looks like. I just I need to see it in hard copy form. All right, let's see here. It sure takes on a different feel though when you're stamping something like a, you know, like a zombie in a scene, other, you know, rather than something like a deer. All right, let's go with that right here. Looking at some of these other images on here, if I want those in the scene or not. And let's just keep it like that for right now. And then we'll stamp some sort of quote stamp up here, you know, like, you know, the beginning, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. We'll use the same quote stamp for the, you know, like this one, the zombie, uh, as the baby sea turtles, you know. I might have lied though when I said we'd go with a little bit more of a colorful scene on this paper. These paper tests right here. All right, some tombstones in the background like that. Some smaller ones, and a couple larger ones right here in the foreground. Like that. And let's go even bigger in the foreground like that. So remember in scenic stamping, if you haven't done scenic stamping before, most types of rubber stamping, other, you know, genres or something like that, you're typically going for the entire image impression in your scene or card. But with scenic stamping, you use the portions of the imagery that suits your purpose. So right here, even like on a small tombstone like that, I'm just using the one tombstone out of the grouping of, you know, whatever, 3 to 5. On this one right here, here's a grouping of 5 tombstones. I just use those ones like that. All right, and let's see how this looks with a little bit of additional tone. Let's add some warm tones to this. We'll make it like a sepia, kind of warmish, tinged scene, maybe. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Let's go with something like this. A little bit of a range of some browns like that, but I'll also use black just for the general general shading. So I'm anchoring down my objects in there. I'm going to stamp out that zombie too close to that branch right there because it almost looks like he's hanging or something like that. right. That pattern, that wood patterning up there works pretty well for this type of scenario, I think. Okay, it's a little bit too warm for me. So I'll bury it a little bit with some of this. This is raw umber here. That one was sienna brown. So I'll just kind of neutralize it a little bit like this. Maybe a greenish tinge would have been cool in this one. So it kind of makes it, I want to go, usually when I'm doing these kind of these Halloweenish types of color schemes, I want it rich, but I also kind of want it a little bit kind of like a dirtier type of color scheme. I think it adds to the whatever, the essence. Yeah, go like that. Right. See, it kind of you can just tone it down if it looks too kind of hot. It didn't wasn't like a hot color, but just for this, you know, this scenario here that didn't have any color, it really stood out. So I just toned it down a little bit. And again, my comment on keeping the shadows roughly around, or just no darker than the objects themselves. So this little shading in the background, you know, it's just like a 5% gray or something of that sort in there. All right, and let's see here. A lot of times when I start shading in certain areas, sometimes I overcolor on specific objects. So like these little rocks in here, I'll just kind of reintroduce a little bit of lighting into them like that. See, I kind of added some tone over it and just some quick shading like that, or these little whatever slopes on the edge of the water. If I color that in a little bit too much, and if I want to reclaim some of that light, we can still do that after the fact, just with some, you know, white paint pen like this. Like right in here, this tombstone goes up right into that tree. So if I want to kind of create a little bit of separation, you can just put a little bit of a highlight on top of that tombstone like that to create separation between this and the background form like that. Texturing, no. A little bit of texturing to the water and lighting. All right, let's see. Let's see if we can throw this in some atmospheric foggy mist. All right, white pigment ink, like this, and yeah, Linda, see if you can find any type of paper like this. I didn't find too much. Okay, so this, I think this is like one pack, but I think I've mentioned this before. You know, when I used to like working on really nice thicker cardstocks, right? You know, at least, I don't know how many pound, but like an 80-pound, I don't know, my Star Dream paper when I started working with lapis lazuli years ago. I think there was 100-pound weight, which is more like a cover stock. But then I had like, I don't know, 3 or 4 packs of that. Okay. Ink it up. blotting off a little bit so you don't get this frayed cotton ball, okay? And this isn't like super juicy with ink right here, so you might use far less than I'm using, in terms of dabbing in like that, but squish it down a little bit and try to apply kind of a drier application of your ink. But yeah, these cheaper types of thinner papers for me have opened up a lot of different possibilities. And cheaper, they're cheaper too, like this is like stationery paper as opposed to like a kind of a nicer cardstock. So for these types of kind of more minimal applications, it's really great. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it here. So I've added, this was lighter to begin with, but I'm adding in this kind of atmospheric, kind of condition right in here. And I mention this all the time, but what you want to do is when you're applying something like this is you want to oscillate it a little bit and don't put it everywhere so that you're playing contrasts against one another, okay? So let's say, and it doesn't matter where you're doing this, you just kind of, okay, so remember this one right here, this was black right here. I put this little highlight on the top of the stone. Sorry if this goes out of focus here. Okay, I don't want to go in too far because it'll go out of focus. But see this right here? That tombstone kind of merges with that visually. So what you do is you just knock this back right here a little bit. Like that. Now you have this tree that's, lighter. Let's, it's in the mist or something like that. And it stands, this tombstone stands out from that background tree a little bit better. Or like this right here. See this, like, this branch really goes right into that head of that zombie. It almost looks like they're not hanging from a noose or something like that. But let's knock this back right here. I'll try to do this without putting this on his head. So a little bit of a branch extraction, we call it in scenic stamping. cranial limb extraction process right there. So I knocked it back. I don't know, like probably it's half as dark, or I don't know, whatever, 30% as dark as it used to be, that branch right there. So that zombie stands out a little bit more. I could put a little bit of white paint here too. There, so complete with surgical precision, we removed the branch from the figure. Now the figure is 15 feet or whatever, 30 feet in front of that tree now instead of impaled by it. All right. Let's see. Let's try a little bit more of this on. Okay, so these tombstones right here are real dark, So let's say I can. So you kind of pinch this off if you want a more narrow kind of application of this. See, I'm just barely touching it right there. I'm not trying to do it in one fell swoop. And you just kind of dab it like that for a lot of control. And now that there's some lighting on the side of that tombstone like that, a little bit more atmosphere maybe. Now these two tombstones have a little bit of a different characteristic from these ones right here. You can put it on all of them, but maybe I want these ones to stand out darker or something like that. This one right here, you can put it on I can put this on the right side of the left side tombstone and on the left side of the right side tombstone. So it gives the impression that the lighting is coming from in here, the center of the piece, because the interior sides of the opposite tombstones are being kind of more illuminated with some of this pigment ink right there. So anyway, There's, you know, these are little things you can do. It doesn't have to be done like that. If I did it mist everywhere, it would look fine too. Oh, so this zombie right here, we'll put them in a little bit of that mist as well. So they're both shaded and kind of illuminated in this lower portion like that too. So again, like a quote stamp up there would be kind of cool. All right, let's see. That did look pretty good, I thought, that pigment ink on there. So that pigment ink against this white seems to merge in with that just fine. So let's do this right in here. I can't see the white pigment ink over the lighter area of that paper, so it, you know, it harmonizes rather well with that. See that right there? It just kind of puts it back in that mist a little bit. About like so. I've kind of bottom lit that palm a little bit, so if the lighting is coming from like more on the horizon, it's underneath the those objects there. Here, I'll kind of reiterate it over here too. If doing this with like a Q-tip is easier, you can do that too. But again, it's all about kind of the dryness of this. You want it really kind of dry on here, so you're not applying like a blob of, you know, ink. All right, see that horizon line in there? We can kind of obscure it a little bit too. You know, where it's a little bit lighter right in here now, and it's darker out here, so it's a real subtle thing. Instead of a black line going across this whole thing, it's lighter right in here, so we can make it physically lighter like that after the fact, and we won't have to kind of plan it from the beginning. Okay, and you can have this mist right in here on this wave. Because I didn't color the wave, I've just left it the lightness of that background wood paper. Put a little bit too much there, so you can just kind of erase it, right? But here, let me do this with a Q-tip right in here so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, we won't do that too much, but see, I put some right here, none right here, and some over here, so it goes from soft to crisp to soft like that. So again, it's contrast. If I put this across that whole area, it would just look kind of more like it's like a blur or something like that. So you just kind of hit it around and oscillate your usage of it, okay? And you can really kind of make a nice lighting, textural type of statement in your pieces. And let's see here. And like I said, I thought these pieces looked pretty good without it, but you know, it's like that little extra touch. Okay, so see these trees right up there, if you just want to kind of alter it a little bit. And so see now these trees, on some of them, on the right hand side of some of them, it's a little bit more illuminated, so it entails that the lighting is coming from this way or the interior like that. This is a little bit closer than this right here, so if you want to emphasize that, you can do that like this, and you can make these objects back here a little bit lighter and kind of also in the mist a little bit more. It's, you know, if you're looking from distance, you're looking through the fog or whatever, the suspended, you know, moisture in the air, so things that are more distant are a little bit more obscured. That, okay. Maybe we'll just leave that one as is. But I'll tell you what, why don't we have some light coming from a little bit around here, like that. So I'll just put some of this right here, like so. It kind of makes your pieces a little more kinesthetic too, because you have these objects that are now being enveloped by moisture and kind of lighting. Every time I stamp this kit, I always think about like coming back home with my friends on the street, kind of after dark, from doing our whatever activities it was. All right, so it kind of adds a little bit of that extra atmosphere. See right there, I hit it on this tree, but not in other areas of the tree. I just kind of used it right here and not over the whole thing. That gets a little bit dark back there, so I don't know if I would want to use this. You could. And this one right here, I've used it like right here and here, but I've left this kind of as is, right? Because this is a bigger tree, with the smaller trees, I might do the whole thing, but on something like this, you just kind of hit it in a couple different areas and it becomes a little bit more kind of a kinesthetic type of whatever statement, so you can make your visuals a little bit more kind of integrated with touch when you add something like that in there. Anyways, okay, so initial tests with this paper, which was easy to do for me because I've been playing around with that marble paper, but just kind of a different textural statement right here. On this one right here, I guess I should have, well, I don't know, I had that dot in there. I would just trim that off though. But I think that paper works pretty good. So again, kind of integrating these little types of things like that. And like I said, we can go a lot more colorful. I'll do that in another experiment right here, but like bringing in some like fall colors or something like that down here and just stamping some trees along the base right here, I think would be really good. Or you can do those things too, where you do like spot colors or something like that. Everything is kind of like grayscale, but you have one object in there that's, colorful or red or something like that. That would work really good on this type of paper right here. Again, where you don't have to add in those extra tones in the background, and they're already added in with, that texture in there. So, right there. There we go. Anyway, fun stuff. You might have these types of things in your supplies already. It doesn't have to be wood, but those scrapbooking paper tablet things that have different types of patterns on them. You might want to, I don't know, see what you have in your paper collections. You might have something similar to this, or just whatever types that work, I think, pretty fun for scenic stamping. I don't know. It certainly makes it easy to do and fast. Let's see. I had a bike with a pink sparkle banana seat. I think you mean seat there. Did it? Yeah, banana seat. Yeah, sissy bar and flower basket. I totally remember those bikes like that, Caroline. Yeah, we had something too like that. I think it was a Schwinn, but I think my sister had that one. But yeah, it was with the basket. You put the basket in the front there, and the sissy bar, and that banana seat. Yeah, sparkle banana. It was that glitter style one, right? Yeah, and then remember those little things you can put into the handles, those like tassel-y looking things. I totally remember that. It was all about, it was all about you know, customizing, that type of thing. The boys didn't have the flower basket, of course, but it was all about that banana seat and sissy bar and those glittery types of handlebar tassel things. I don't know, you call it tassel. I don't know what you would call those streamer things like that. Yeah. And with the guy, and we were always, Evil Knievel was big back then too. So it was like we were always setting up jumps with it. Yeah, if someone had some like piece of like plyboard or something like that, it was typically you know that type of scenario back then. Paper here in Australia is 36.20 for 80 sheets. Look for a different type out there, Janet. See if you can find something. See if you can find something similar, or look up those scrapbooking pads. Like just enter in like wood grain paper and see if you can find like an assorted style there. So one thing about these packs too, we need to do some kind of organized thing or something like that, or I should do it. But like this white wood grain, I don't know if I'm going through 80 sheets, but I don't know. I went through a lot to just sitting here today, but like some of these, like that marble paper, 11 by 17, 100 sheets in there. I don't know. We need to put together like some sort of a sorted pack or something like that, And I'll just, I don't know, I'll throw them online or something like that, or on eBay, or something like that, where we just, we can organize, where we have like some assorted types of papers like this, maybe like 15 or 20 sheets or something like that of certain things. Like I said, I don't need 100 sheets of 11 by 17 marble patterned, in one color. So, anyways, yeah. I don't know. These are really fun, though. I'm starting to not value, but I get I get I see the value in quick scenarios. With these ones. I don't know. Maybe it was working with Deanna's papers or something like that. I thought, I don't know, that's pretty fun. It's kind of a challenge too, to keep things kind of like sparse. For me, it was like a lot of my scenes, and I still like doing it, but it's kind of like the kitchen sink. I kept adding more and more media to my repertoire, and I wouldn't take anything out. It was like, oh my God, the white, pigment ink that works great, and then those multi packs of acrylic paint pens came out where I was just using white before, so I started doing all of these types of pens, and then there's the extra fine 0.7 millimeters and the 3 millimeter ones came out, and I was using all that. So this is like I kind of like pulling back and going kind of more minimal with these, but I really like the looks of these types of things. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna add in like some quote stamps to these ones as well. But I really like I don't know, the simplicity of them some ways, but I don't think they're missing anything though. I might be doing less color or something like that, but I don't know. Yeah, these different types of pattern papers are really fun to work with. So I'm going to do this other thing too. I bought this other pack of like stationery that has these floral or leaf types of designs on it. And it's lined paper, so it's like working on stationery. So I think that would look really cool too, to have like these lines going, through it, like it's paper to write on. It's like stationery paper that you would write on it. And I think that will make a pretty cool graphic statement with those ones as well. So I'll do that one. And those ones are colored. So I'll try to work within the color schemes of those colored papers there. So look for something like that too in Australia. I'd imagine those ones. I'd imagine everything's coming out of China anyway. So in terms of like transit time or distance or expense, I gotta think some of those papers are out there. Just like the vintage papers. There's like a gazillion choices over here for those ones, but I don't know. You might be able to find like a really good price for that type of paper as well. That comes in like 5 different patterned packs, maybe with 10 sheets each or something like that. So it's not just one pattern, and 80 sheets of it or something like that. All right. High handlebars. Yeah, right. It was all about those like cruising back then, huh? Yeah. Oh, the skateboards too. Yeah. Skateboards were really popular. Skateboards, I think we had one early on and it had metal wheels. But when those kind of, I don't know, whatever they are, those clear ones, those acrylic ones came out, we started getting that with the grip tape and the prism tape and all that. It was all about those aluminum boards at one point in time that got really popular. All right, folks. Thanks for checking out yet another type of paper. It's really kind of fun to kind of explore these papers and different types of surfaces and patterns. Oh, thanks, Cynthia. Thanks, David. Hope to see you again. I did put out some on my little questionnaire thing. I said, if there's anything people want to see, let me know. So if there's anything you guys want me to cover in the future, let me know, and we'll try to get to that. One of them mentioned like silhouette style scenarios, desert types of scenes, and someone mentioned kind of like holiday tropical types of things. Was that you, Cynthia? I forgot who said that. Someone said that. It makes me think of that beer commercial where those lights come on that palm tree. All right, folks. Have a great rest of evening, and thanks again for joining in here.